The explosion rocked the Imperial outpost, sending debris and screams through the sterile corridors. Kai Morgan pulled his mask tighter against the acrid smoke as he sprinted through the chaos, counting seconds in his head. The diversion would only hold for 7 minutes. "West corridor clear," crackled Talia's voice in his earpiece. "You've got company heading your way. 4 guards, heavy weapons." Kai ducked into an alcove, the familiar weight of his pulse rifle pressed against his chest. The Solarian Empire had taken everything from him, his home, his family, his future. Today, they would finally learn that humans weren't the docile creatures they believed they'd conquered. "Status on the package," he whispered. "Royal Quarters, 2nd level. Security protocols activated, but Finn's bypass should work. You've got 5 minutes before the shields reset." The sound of armored footsteps approached. Kai held his breath as 4 Solarian guards rushed past, their iridescent skin glowing faintly blue under the emergency lights. He waited 3 heartbeats before continuing toward his target. The royal quarters were obscenely luxurious compared to the utilitarian military design of the rest of the outpost. Kai's boots sank into plush carpet as he approached the sealed door. "I'm at the entrance," he reported. "Initiating bypass." He pressed Finn's device against the door's security panel. A series of lights blinked, followed by a soft click as the locks disengaged. Kai pushed the door open, rifle raised. Princess Lyra Celastis stood by the window, her back to him. Even in the dim light, she radiated an otherworldly beauty, tall and slender with skin that shimmered like mother of pearl. Her silver hair cascaded down her back in elaborate braids interwoven with precious gems. "Don't move," Kai ordered. She turned slowly, her luminescent violet eyes narrowing as she took in his human form. "So the vermin finally show themselves," she said, her voice melodic despite the venom in her words. "Princess Lyra Celastis," Kai said, "you're coming with me." "I would rather die than be touched by a human," she hissed, her fingers moving subtly toward a hidden panel in the wall. Kai lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. "Not an option, Your Highness." Her skin was cool against his, almost metallic to the touch. Up close, the alien nature of her beauty was even more apparent, the subtle ridges along her temples, the faint patterns beneath her skin that seemed to pulse with light. "My father will hunt you to the edges of the galaxy," she warned. "That's the plan." Kai bound her wrists with restraints. "Emperor Celastis will learn that humans are not to be underestimated." 3 minutes, Talia's voice warned in his ear. Kai pulled a cloak from his pack. "Put this on. Cover your face." For a moment, he thought the princess would refuse, but a distant explosion seemed to change her mind. With a look of pure contempt, she threw the cloak around her shoulders. "If you harm me," she began. "You're worth nothing to us dead," Kai interrupted. "Cooperate, and you'll remain unharmed." They moved swiftly through the corridors, avoiding the main battle zones. Princess Lyra kept pace surprisingly well, her regal bearing never faltering despite the chaos around them. When they reached the extraction point, Talia was waiting with their shuttle, engines humming. "The great princess herself," Talia said, eyes widening. "The Emperor will definitely pay attention now." "Or destroy every human settlement in retaliation," Lyra replied coldly. Kai pushed her gently but firmly aboard. "There aren't many left to destroy, thanks to your father." As the shuttle lifted off, Imperial fighters scrambled to pursue them. Kai strapped himself into the pilot's seat, taking over from Talia. The princess sat rigidly behind them, her violet eyes burning with hatred. "You've made a grave mistake," she said quietly. "You know nothing about me or my people." Kai punched the accelerator, sending the shuttle hurtling toward the rebel fleet hidden in the asteroid belt. "I know enough," he replied, though something in her tone made him glance back at her. For just a moment, beneath the imperial arrogance, he thought he glimpsed something unexpected in those alien eyes, not fear, but a flicker of something like calculation. The imperial fighters had given up the chase hours ago, but Kai kept the shuttle at maximum speed. Beside him, Talia monitored their trajectory toward the hidden rebel base on Callisto Moon. "We're clear," she said finally. "No pursuit signals within range." In the rear compartment, Princess Lyra sat perfectly still, her luminescent eyes fixed on the viewport. She hadn't spoken since their escape, maintaining a regal silence that somehow filled the small craft more effectively than screams or threats. "The prisoner needs water," Kai said, unbuckling his harness. "I'll check on her." Talia caught his arm. "Be careful. Solarians can manipulate bioelectrical fields. The restraints should block it, but—" "I know what they can do," Kai replied, the memory of his sister's death flashing through his mind. When he approached the princess, she didn't acknowledge him, though he knew she was aware of his presence. Up close, the subtle patterns beneath her pearlescent skin pulsed with light, a Solarian physiological response to stress or anger. "Water," he said, offering a container with a straw. Lyra finally turned to look at him, her violet eyes cold. "Your species requires more hydration than mine. Take it anyway. It's going to be a long journey." She accepted the water with bound hands, taking a small sip. "How long do you imagine the Emperor will allow me to remain your captive?" "Long enough to negotiate the release of our people from your labor camps," Kai answered. A flicker of something crossed her face. "You speak as if I personally imprisoned them. You benefit from their suffering. Your entire empire is built on." The shuttle lurched violently, throwing Kai against the bulkhead. Warning lights flashed as Talia shouted from the cockpit. "Imperial cruiser just dropped out of hyperspace. They've locked weapons." Kai scrambled back to his seat. "Impossible. They couldn't have tracked us through the asteroid field." The princess's voice came from behind them, strangely calm. "The royal bloodline carries tracking biosignatures. My father can find me anywhere in the galaxy." Before Kai could respond, the shuttle rocked with a direct hit. Systems blared warnings as the engine core destabilized. "We're losing power," Talia reported, fingers flying over the controls. "Hull breach in the cargo section." Kai scanned the navigation charts. "There's a neutral trading post on Vega Minor. We can make an emergency landing." "If we survive that long," Talia muttered as another blast grazed their wing. Kai glanced back at the princess, who watched the unfolding chaos with an unreadable expression. "If we die, you die too," he reminded her. "Perhaps that's preferable to being your bargaining chip," she replied evenly. The shuttle shuddered into Vega Minor's atmosphere, systems failing as they descended toward the planet's surface. Talia fought the controls while Kai diverted all remaining power to the landing stabilizers. "Brace for impact," he shouted as they skimmed the treetops of a dense forest. The crash sent Kai flying forward against his restraints. When he regained consciousness minutes later, smoke filled the cabin. He unstrapped himself and checked Talia, unconscious but breathing. Then he remembered the princess. The rear compartment had partially collapsed. Princess Lyra lay trapped beneath a fallen support beam, silver blood seeping from a gash across her forehead. Her restraints had broken in the impact. Against his better judgment, Kai lifted the beam off her. "Can you move?" Her eyes fluttered open, disoriented before focusing on him. "Why would you help me?" "Dead hostages aren't useful," he replied, though even to his own ears, the words lacked conviction. They managed to drag Talia from the wreckage before the shuttle's remaining power cells detonated. In the aftermath, they stood at the forest's edge, a human rebel, an unconscious pilot, and an alien princess, staring at the burning remains of their transport. "The explosion will attract attention," Lyra observed, wiping silver blood from her brow. The question is whose attention, Kai replied grimly. This planet's officially neutral, but it's still too close to Imperial space for comfort. Night was falling, bringing a bone-deep chill. Kai constructed a makeshift stretcher for Talia from debris and forest materials. We need to find shelter and medical supplies, he said, eyeing the princess warily. You're no longer restrained. I'm assuming you'll try to escape. Lyra touched her wand, examining the silver substance on her fingertips. Your companion needs medical attention that I doubt you can provide. I, however, have training in xenobiology. Why would you help us? She met his gaze directly. Because Vega Minor is home to predators that hunt by tracking blood, specifically, silver blood like mine. Alone, none of us will survive the night. Kai studied her, searching for deception. So it's a temporary alliance. Precisely. She gestured toward distant lights visible through the trees. That settlement may have what we need. I suggest we move quickly. As they began their trek through the darkening forest, Kai maintained vigilance, weapon ready. But as Princess Lyra walked ahead, helping guide the stretcher through difficult terrain, he found himself puzzled by the contradiction she presented, an imperial royal willingly aiding her kidnappers. You're not what I expected, he admitted finally. She glanced back, the patterns beneath her skin pulsing subtly in the twilight. Neither are you, human. I was taught your kind were little more than animals. And I was taught your people were monsters, Kai replied. Perhaps we've both been deceived. The forest grew darker around them as they continued toward the distant lights, enemies forced into an uneasy alliance, neither fully trusting yet both beginning to question long-held certainties about the other. 3 days after their crash landing on Vega Minor, Kai, Lyra, and a recovering Talia secured passage on a smuggler's vessel bound for the Outer Rim. The captain, a grizzled Centaurian named Vox, asked no questions when Kai offered a cache of Imperial communication crystals salvaged from the shuttle wreckage. Keep your princess hidden, Vox had warned, 4 eyes blinking asynchronously. Imperial bounty notices are flooding every channel. Now, as they approached the rebel headquarters on Callisto Moon, Lyra stood beside Kai in the observation deck, watching the desolate satellite grow larger in the viewport. She'd maintained her part of their uneasy alliance, treating Talia's injuries with unexpected skill and making no attempt to contact Imperial forces while on Vega Minor. Your rebel base is a mining colony? She asked, studying the cratered surface. Was a mining colony, Kai corrected. Abandoned after your father's forces stripped it of resources and executed the workers who couldn't meet quotas. Something flashed across Lyra's face, doubt, perhaps, or disbelief. The Empire maintained strict labor regulations. Mass executions would violate Imperial law. Kai laughed bitterly. Tell that to the mass graves we found when we established our base. The ship docked in a concealed hangar carved into one of Callisto's largest craters. Kai noticed Lyra's subtle flinch as rebels surrounded them, weapons raised, faces hardened by years of resistance. Commander Ilara Reeve pushed through the crowd, her weathered face betraying no emotion as she assessed their unexpected guest. You actually did it, she said to Kai. You captured the Emperor's daughter. The Emperor's heir, Lyra corrected, standing impossibly taller. And you would be wise to remember that when he comes to reclaim me. Ilara's scarred eyebrow arched. Your accommodations await, Your Highness. Not what you're accustomed to, I'm afraid. The accommodations were a repurposed storage unit, hastily converted into a secure holding cell. Kai watched as Lyra surveyed the space, the simple cot, the portable sanitation unit, the reinforced door. 2 guards at all times, Ilara instructed. And energy dampeners to neutralize any Solarian bioelectric manipulation. When they were alone, Kai hesitated at the door. You'll be treated humanely, he assured her. Despite what your people have done to ours. Lyra's luminescent eyes fixed on him. You continue to speak as though I personally ordered your people's suffering. Didn't you? Kai challenged. As the heir to the throne, you've never questioned the Empire's methods? Never wondered where your luxuries come from? Before she could answer, the door closed between them. Later that night, Commander Ilara summoned Kai to the command center, where surveillance feeds showed Lyra sitting motionless on her cot. The council is divided on how to proceed, Ilara explained. Half want to broadcast proof of her capture immediately. The others believe we should wait until we've secured concessions. And you? Kai asked. I think we need to understand what we're dealing with. She activated a holographic display. While you were stranded on Vega Minor, our intelligence team intercepted these encrypted Imperial communications. The display showed fragmented messages, most partially corrupted. But certain phrases stood out clearly: Princess's Peace Initiative, rejected by Emperor, surveillance on royal heir, suspicion of treason. Kai stared at the fragments. What does this mean? It means our guest might be more than a bargaining chip, Ilara replied. She might be a dissident within the Imperial Court itself. The next morning, Kai brought Lyra breakfast and a change of clothes. She accepted both with quiet dignity. I'd like to show you something, he said. If you agree to come with me, without attempting escape. Her violet eyes studied him. You're beginning to trust me? No, he answered honestly. But I think you deserve to see the truth. Under heavy guard, he led her through tunnels to a sealed chamber that had once been part of the mining operations administrative section. Inside, preserved behind stasis fields, were hundreds of data crystals and physical documents. What is this place? Lyra asked. We call it the Archive of Atrocities, Kai explained, activating the main console. Everything here was recovered from Imperial outposts, vessels, and this mining colony itself. Images flickered to life on the projection screens, records of human labor camps, execution orders signed by Imperial officials, medical experimentation logs, resource extraction quotas with casualty allowances clearly defined. These are forgeries, Lyra whispered, but uncertainty tinged her voice. See for yourself. Kai handed her access to the system. Verify the authentication codes. Check the signatures. For hours, Lyra immersed herself in the archives, her expression growing more troubled with each document she examined. Kai watched as her certainty crumbled, replaced by horror and disbelief. My father's seal, she said finally, her voice hollow as she traced the Emperor's distinctive mark on an execution order. And here, my cousin Darian's authorization for medical experiments on human children. She looked up at Kai, the patterns beneath her skin pulsing erratically. I knew there were labor camps, but they told us humans were treated fairly, given purpose. She trailed off, then asked quietly, your family? My parents died in the initial invasion, Kai replied. My sister Maya survived until last year. She was chosen for medical advancement procedures at an Imperial research facility. Understanding dawned in Lyra's eyes. That's why you took me. Not just as a bargaining chip for your movement, but for personal vengeance. Justice, Kai corrected. And to prevent more deaths. Later, as they walked back toward her cell, Lyra suddenly stopped. There's something you should know, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For the past 3 years, I've been part of a secret faction within the Imperial Court, those who believe the subjugation of other species violates our most sacred principles. She met his gaze directly. My father discovered my involvement recently. I was being sent to the outpost for rehabilitation when you abducted me. Your raid may have saved my life. Why should I believe you? Kai asked. Access the Imperial judicial records from the third moon of Celastus, she replied. Search for Case 7291, the prosecution of Governor Thax for excessive leniency toward human laborers. You'll find my testimony in his defense. That night, Kai did exactly that, breaking through layers of Imperial encryption to discover the truth. Princess Lyra Celastis had indeed risked her position to defend an official who had attempted to improve conditions for human workers. As dawn broke over Callisto Moon, both captor and captive found themselves facing unexpected revelations, each forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the other. Commander Ilara studied the tactical display with growing concern. 3 Imperial patrol ships have entered the sector in the past 12 hours, she reported to the assembled rebel leadership. Standard search pattern, but they're getting closer. Kai frowned. The princess's biosignature? Possibly, Ilara replied. Though the dampening field should be masking it. 2 weeks had passed since Lyra's revelation about her opposition to her father's regime. The rebel council remained divided, some believing her confession was a manipulation tactic, others seeing a potential ally in their fight against the Empire. Kai had verified her claims about Case 7291 and uncovered additional evidence of her covert resistance. Still, years of fighting had taught him caution. We should move her, he suggested. If they're tracking her, staying here puts everyone at risk. And if it's a trap, asked Talia, now fully recovered. What if she's been playing us, waiting for extraction? Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the base. The tactical display flashed red as a massive Imperial warship dropped out of hyperspace directly above Callisto Moon. Dreadnought class, gasped one of the technicians. The Emperor's personal flagship. Kai rushed to Lyra's cell, finding her already on her feet, expression grim. Your father has found us, he said, unlocking the door. That's impossible, she replied, eyes wide with genuine fear. The dampening field. Clearly didn't work, Kai interrupted, handing her a communication device. We're evacuating. You're coming with us. Around them, the base erupted into organized chaos as rebels rushed to implement long-established evacuation protocols. Deep beneath the surface, hidden shuttles were being prepared for departure. Where would you even go? Lyra asked as they hurried through corridors jammed with rebels gathering essential supplies. The Emperor will hunt you across the galaxy. We have contingency plans, Kai responded, though doubt crept into his voice. They reached the command center as the first Imperial landing crafts touched down on the moon's surface. Commander Ilara was issuing final orders, her face set in determined lines. They've deployed sonic disruptors, a communications officer reported. They'll breach our shields in 10 minutes. Ilara turned to Lyra. If you've been truthful about opposing your father, now's the time to prove it. Lyra stepped forward, studying the tactical display. The disruptors require continual calibration from the flagship, she said. If you can disrupt their communication frequency, it would buy you time. And how exactly would we do that? Talia asked skeptically. Imperial systems recognize royal biological signatures, Lyra explained. I could transmit a falsified command sequence. It could be a trick, warned one of the council members. Kai looked into Lyra's eyes, searching for deception. Instead, he found resolve. Let her try, he decided. Working quickly, the technical team established a secure channel to the Imperial flagship. Lyra placed her palm on the transmitter, her skin glowing brightly as she channeled her bioelectric energy into the system. By royal authority of Princess Lyra Celastis, heir to the Solarian throne, she spoke clearly, I command immediate recalibration of all surface disruptors. Authorization code Helios Crown 79. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then the tactical display showed the disruptors powering down. It worked, breathed Ilara. We have maybe 15 minutes before they realize the deception. Get your people to the evacuation shuttles, Lyra urged. I'll create another distraction. Kai grabbed her arm. You're coming with us. She shook her head. My father would pursue you relentlessly as long as I'm with you. This way, I can return and work against him from within. They'll execute you for treason the moment they realize you helped us, Kai argued. Not if I convince them I was acting under duress, Lyra countered. My royal blood protects me from immediate execution. Protocol demands a formal trial. Ilara interrupted their debate. Whatever you're doing, decide quickly. Imperial troops have breached the outer perimeter. The evacuation was already underway, rebels streaming toward the hidden hangar bays. Kai felt torn between duty to his people and a growing compulsion to protect Lyra. Go, Lyra insisted. I'll transmit intelligence to the rebel network when I can. Before Kai could respond, an explosion rocked the command center. Through swirling smoke and debris, Imperial soldiers in gleaming armor poured into the room, weapons raised. Get to the south hangar, Ilara ordered Kai, drawing her sidearm. Get our people out. In the chaos that followed, Kai lost sight of Lyra. He fought his way through corridors, helping injured rebels toward the evacuation points. The sound of weapons fire echoed throughout the base as Imperial forces met fierce resistance. Kai reached the south hangar just as the last shuttle was preparing for departure. Talia waved him aboard frantically. Where's the princess? She shouted over the engines. She stayed behind, Kai replied, scanning the hangar entrance. We can't wait, the pilot called. Imperial fighters are launching. As the shuttle lifted off, Kai caught a glimpse through the viewport of Imperial soldiers escorting a figure with silver hair toward their landing craft. Even from a distance, he could see Lyra's regal posture, her head held high as she was led away. The rebel fleet scattered to prearranged rendezvous points across the outer systems. On the command shuttle, survivors gathered to assess their losses and plan their next moves. We lost 17 people, Ilara reported grimly. But over 200 escaped. The princess's distraction saved countless lives. And now she's in her father's hands, Kai said. He'll discover her betrayal. That's not our concern, one of the council members argued. We need to focus on rebuilding, not on an imperial princess. Kai stood abruptly. She risked everything for us. We can't abandon her. What exactly are you proposing? Ilara asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. A rescue mission, Kai replied without hesitation. Small team, covert insertion. Into the Imperial Palace? Talia exclaimed. That's suicide. Not necessarily, came a voice from the doorway. They turned to see Vox, the Centaurian smuggler who had transported them from Vega Minor. My ship is registered with legitimate Imperial trade credentials. With the right disguises and documentation, a small team could infiltrate the capital. You'd risk your ship and your life for this? Ilara asked. Vox's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. The princess paid me handsomely to remain close to your fleet. Said you might need emergency transport. Kai felt a surge of admiration for Lyra's foresight. She planned for this possibility all along. 3 days later, Vox's vessel approached Celastus Prime, the gleaming heart of the Empire. The official story, a shipment of rare minerals for the Imperial Treasury, got them through the initial security checkpoints. Disguised as trade officials, Kai, Talia, and 2 other rebels disembarked in the massive commercial district adjacent to the Imperial complex. According to our intelligence, the princess is being held in the North Tower, awaiting trial, Talia murmured, consulting a stolen security schematic. How do we get in? One of the rebels asked. We don't, Kai replied. At least, not through any conventional entrance. He pointed to a maintenance shaft that connected the commercial water purification system to the Imperial Gardens. Years earlier, a rebel operative had mapped the tunnel before being captured and executed. Once inside, we have 6 hours before the next security sweep, Kai continued. We find Lyra, extract her, and return to the ship before the lockdown at dusk. The infiltration went smoothly until they reached the North Tower. There, they discovered an unexpected complication: the princess's trial had been moved forward. Imperial guards in ceremonial armor lined the corridors leading to the judgment chamber. "We'll never get past them," Talia whispered as they hid in an alcove. "We don't need to," Kai realized, studying the architecture. "Royal chambers always have private evacuation routes. We find a way to her." Following the ancient architectural patterns typical of Solarian design, they located a concealed passage behind an ornate wall panel. The narrow corridor led them upward, through the heart of the tower, until they reached a small antechamber. Beyond an iridescent energy barrier, Lyra stood on a balcony, dressed in formal imperial regalia. She appeared to be alone, looking out over the capital city. Kai disabled the barrier using codes from their stolen security data. At the soft sound of deactivation, Lyra turned, her expression shifting from surprise to urgent warning. "It's a trap," she said quietly. "My father knew you would come." From the shadows stepped Emperor Celastus himself, tall and imposing, his skin gleaming with power. "Indeed," he said, his voice resonating with authority. "My daughter has always underestimated my awareness of her sympathies." Imperial guards materialized from hidden alcoves, surrounding the rescue team. Kai raised his hands slowly, mind racing for a solution. "Father," Lyra stepped between the Emperor and Kai. "These rebels forced me to help them escape. I knew you would pursue them, which is why I left the tracking beacon active in my royal seal." The Emperor studied his daughter skeptically. "Your loyalty has been questioned for some time, child." "Test my loyalty, then," Lyra replied evenly. "Let me prove it by executing these rebels myself." A guard handed her an imperial energy weapon. Lyra accepted it with steady hands, turning to face Kai and the rescue team. Their eyes met across the chamber, volumes of unspoken communication passing between them in an instant. Kai saw determination in her violet gaze, and something else that made his heart race. Lyra raised the weapon, aiming directly at his chest. The energy weapon hummed in Lyra's hands as she aimed at Kai's chest. Time seemed to slow, every heartbeat stretching into eternity as the Emperor watched with cold satisfaction. "Do it, daughter," he commanded. "Prove your loyalty to the Empire." Lyra's finger tightened on the trigger. In that suspended moment, memories flashed through Kai's mind, the archive of atrocities, Lyra's horror at her family's crimes, the trust that had grown between them against all odds. In a blur of motion too swift for human eyes, Lyra spun and fired, not at Kai, but at the ornate control panel on the wall behind the Emperor. Alarms blared instantly as the tower's security systems went haywire, energy barriers flickering throughout the chamber. "Run," she shouted, firing again at the guards closest to Kai. Chaos erupted. The Emperor roared with rage, his skin pulsing with deadly bioelectrical energy. Kai and his team seized the moment, attacking the disoriented guards while Lyra pressed something into her father's hand, a small crystal that flared brilliantly upon contact with his skin. The Emperor staggered, momentarily paralyzed by the disruption to his bioelectric field. "Traitor," he gasped. "No, father," Lyra replied, her voice steady despite the mayhem around them. "I am loyal to what our people should be, not what you've made us." Kai fought his way to her side. "We need to go. Now." Together, they battled through the remaining guards, making their way to the hidden passage. Talia and one rebel had secured their escape route, but the other rebel lay motionless on the chamber floor. "The disruption crystal will only hold him for minutes," Lyra warned as they fled down the passage. "And every Imperial guard on Celastus Prime will be hunting us." They emerged into the Imperial gardens where chaos had already spread. Warning sirens echoed across the capital as security forces mobilized. "The commercial district is locked down," Talia reported, checking her communications device. "Vox can't reach us there. We need another way off planet," Kai said. Lyra's expression shifted as an idea formed. The Imperial Armada conducts a daily patrol rotation. My father's personal shuttle will be preparing for inspection duty. And you can access it? Kai asked. Royal biosignatures override all security protocols, she confirmed. But we'll have to move quickly, before they designate mine as rogue. They navigated through service corridors and maintenance tunnels, avoiding the main thoroughfares where Imperial forces were gathering. When they reached the royal hangar, Lyra placed her palm on the access panel. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened, then the massive doors slid open. It still recognizes me, she breathed in relief. The Emperor's shuttle gleamed in the center of the hangar, its sleek design a testament to Solarian technological superiority. As they approached, a maintenance technician looked up in surprise. Princess. We weren't informed. Talia's stun blast silenced him before he could raise the alarm. They boarded quickly, Lyra taking the pilot's position with practiced ease. You can fly this thing? Kai asked, strapping himself into the co-pilot's seat. Every royal must master all Imperial vessels, she replied, her fingers dancing across the controls. Part of our military training. The shuttle lifted smoothly from the hangar floor, its engines humming with power. On the communication systems, frantic orders were already being issued to planetary defense forces. Imperial Shuttle Helios Crown, you are not cleared for departure, came an official voice over the comm, return to hangar immediately. Lyra activated the shuttle's transponder. This is Princess Lyra Celastus on royal inspection duty. Priority override Celastus Alpha 9. There was a moment of hesitation before the controller responded. Confirmed, Your Highness. However, we show no scheduled inspection. Do you question royal authority? Lyra interrupted, her voice carrying every ounce of imperial command. And no, Your Highness. Proceeding with clearance. The shuttle accelerated through the atmosphere, breaking into open space as planetary defense platforms tracked their trajectory but held their fire, confusion still reigning in the command chain. That won't last long, Lyra warned, pushing the engines to maximum thrust. My father will issue direct orders to shoot us down any moment. As if summoned by her words, 2 Imperial fighters appeared on their scanners, moving to intercept. Where exactly are we going? Kai asked as Lyra executed evasive maneuvers. Rendezvous coordinates, Talia supplied. Vox is already heading there with the rebel survivors. The Imperial fighters opened fire, energy blasts streaking past the shuttle. Lyra's piloting skills proved remarkable as she weaved through the barrage, but a glancing hit rocked the vessel. Shields at 60%, she reported tensely. We need to reach hyperspace coordinates. There. Kai pointed to a navigational marker. That's our jump point. As they approached the coordinates, the shuttle shuddered under another hit. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. Shields failing, Lyra announced. Hyperspace engines still operational but... She hesitated, checking the scanners. 3 more Imperial vessels incoming. Dreadnought class. Can we make the jump before they reach us? Talia asked. Yes, but they'll track our vector, Lyra replied. We'll lead them straight to your people. Kai saw the determination in her eyes. You have another plan. Lyra nodded. There's an emergency beacon in this shuttle, designed to summon any Imperial forces within 50 systems if the royal family is in danger. She looked at him meaningfully. I can activate it, then program the shuttle to continue on a different trajectory. Empty. Understanding dawned. While we escape on the emergency pods, Kai finished. They'll follow the shuttle. It might buy your people enough time to regroup, Lyra said. Without waiting for approval, she began programming the autopilot while simultaneously preparing the emergency escape pods. As more Imperial fire rocked the shuttle, they worked together in perfect coordination. "Pods ready," Talia reported. "But there are only two. One of us will have to stay behind." "No," Kai said firmly. "We go together or not at all." Lyra solved the dilemma by activating the Royal Emergency Beacon, then setting the hyperspace coordinates. "These pods are designed for Solarian physiology," she explained. "2 humans and 1 Solarian in each. Will fit." As the Imperial ships closed in, they abandoned the shuttle, escape pods launching silently into space just as the royal vessel jumped to hyperspace, emergency beacon blaring its distress call to every Imperial force in the sector. The pods, designed to evade detection, drifted until the Imperial forces pursued the empty shuttle. Then, using minimal power, they navigated to the rebel rendezvous point. Vox's ship retrieved them hours later. On board, they found not only the surviving rebels from Callisto Moon but representatives from a dozen resistance movements across the galaxy. "Word of the princess's defection has spread," Commander Ilara explained. "Imperial communications are in chaos. Several outlying systems have already declared independence. And rebellions have erupted on at least 7 Imperial mining colonies," added another rebel leader. "The workers are rising up, inspired by stories of the princess who chose humans over her own father." Lyra looked troubled by this news. "Many will die in these uprisings. The Imperial forces will respond with brutal efficiency. Unless they're too busy with internal problems," Kai suggested. "How many within the Empire shared your views about human treatment?" "More than my father ever realized," Lyra replied. "Many influential houses have quietly opposed his policies for years. With the right signal, they might act." From this spark of possibility came a daring plan. Using the Emperor's shuttle's royal encryption codes, Lyra transmitted evidence from the archive of atrocities to key sympathizers within the Imperial court. Simultaneously, rebel forces launched coordinated strikes against Imperial supply lines, targeting not military installations but the labor camps themselves, freeing thousands of human prisoners. Within days, the galaxy erupted in revolution. 3 Imperial governors publicly denounced the Emperor's human policies. Imperial military vessels in outlying systems refused orders to fire on civilian populations. The carefully maintained facade of Imperial unity cracked, then shattered. 1 month after their escape from Celastus Prime, Kai and Lyra stood on the bridge of a liberated Imperial cruiser, now the flagship of the United Resistance. On the view screen, representatives from both human colonies and Solarian provinces gathered for historic peace negotiations. "The Emperor still controls the core systems," Ilara reminded them. "This war is far from over. But for the first time, we're fighting on equal terms," Kai said. "Thanks to you," he added, turning to Lyra. The princess, no longer recognized as such by the Empire, had discarded her royal regalia for the practical uniform of the resistance. Yet she maintained a dignity that no Imperial finery could have conveyed, her natural leadership drawing respect from humans and Solarians alike. "My father built his empire on lies and cruelty," Lyra said, watching the delegates on the screen. "We're building something different, founded on truth and justice." "And when the fighting ends?" Kai asked quietly. "What then?" Lyra's luminescent eyes met his, the patterns beneath her skin pulsing with emotion. "Then we create a new society where neither of our peoples rules the other. Where we govern together." "A tall order," Kai said with a half-smile. "Centuries of hatred don't disappear overnight." "No," Lyra agreed, her cool hand finding his. "But they can transform, given time and effort. Just as ours did." On the view screen, human and Solarian representatives signed the first formal alliance in galactic history. Outside, stars stretched to infinity, witnesses to the beginning of a new era born from the unlikeliest of bonds between a human rebel and an alien princess. "It won't be easy," Kai said, squeezing her hand gently. "Nothing worthwhile ever is," Lyra replied, the light within her skin pulsing in harmony with his heartbeat. "But we'll face it together." As the delegates dispersed and the crew prepared for their next mission, Kai and Lyra remained side by side, their improbable journey from enemies to allies to something deeper serving as both symbol and substance of the revolution they had sparked, a revolution that would reshape not just the political landscape of the galaxy, but the very understanding of what it meant to be human or Solarian. In their union lay the promise of something entirely new, a future neither could have imagined alone, but which together, they would fight to create.